And we're back. I'm Ossie from Three Monkeys, home of the world's best cables for your pedal board. Check us out at threemonkeyssolderless.com. Get you some cables. All right, so we're back on the Sunday thing. We skipped a Sunday and we inserted a Wednesday or something like that, like Carvel. And we did a little bit of I think it was a Jose amp demo too, and we did the Marshmello through the speaker cabinet just to talk about how quiet it is. I've been working a bunch on some other stuff. The past couple of weeks been keeping really busy. Seems like every once in a while it's like your name gets into the wind and it blows around, and the next thing you know, you're in play, right? You're on the ice again. You're out of the box. You're on the ice, skating around, getting the puck, making some shots, doing some things. But yeah, it's good. You know, I like to keep busy. It's been maybe more busy than I like, but yeah, it's okay. It's all good. So, not a whole lot of time to prepare for today. Been working a little bit still on obviously the first album sounds, right? With the Marshmello amp and the little stomp. I actually put the custom back in the white guitar. I just felt like it held better together than the PAFs. I don't know. Everybody hears everything differently, so I don't know whether this is appropriate or not. But I'm just liking the way that this is thicker sounding. Anyway, I figured maybe we'd answer some questions. We'd go through the comment section today, and answer some comments. That's kind of redundant, but that's what we do. All right, so here we go. I got some queued up already. We got VHolic. This is going back. This is how loud is the Marshmello, the 1 amp video. Commenting, VHolic. Sounds awesome, Ossie. Well, thanks, VH. Can this be done to a 1970 super lead? Pickles. Also, what pickups are you using? Thanks. All right, so as we just discussed, I will say it was the Seymour Duncan custom in that video in this guitar. Can it be done to a 1970 super lead? Technically, yes, but I wouldn't want to pull out your power transformer and output transformer to put in the ones that are in this, because that's really where the whole thing comes from, right? So technically, yes, it can be done to it, but it's not a mod. See, that's like the weird thing to sort of like talk about. It's not really a mod. It's like if you were to take a picture, I should take a picture of the inside of the amp and just show it, because it doesn't matter, right? And just put it up what it looks like inside. It looks stock, with the exception of it has a little load resistor in it to keep everything, sort of, because it's internally loaded, because I wanted to be able to have a line out that you could use with the stomp pedal and just, not have to worry about having a load box or a speaker cabinet to go into this, that it would sort of take care of everything on it. So if I took a picture of the inside of this thing, you'd be like, I don't see anything except for that load resistor. There's nothing else in there, and the line out. There's nothing in there. It's all about how the transformers work and how the how the amp is set up inside, right? Like biasing it, getting the right tubes in it. Not that you need very expensive tubes or you need a specific type of tube. It's not about that. It's like you get tubes, you're going to roll them in like preamp tubes and find the ones that sort of do what you're expecting to hear. But then the power tubes, you're going to get, I'm using just like EH, right? Electro-Harmonic, Sovtek kind of deals. And it's just biasing them into the exact sort of like right point where they start to take on this interesting sound to them. So it's really about the setup and the amp. It's not really a mod. So if I could do it, to your amp, it would, I'd be ruining it in the sense that I'd be taking out your original 1970 Transformers and, putting them in a box and mailing them back to you. So, I wouldn't do that to a 70s amp because that amp is fairly valuable. And, if you wanted, I'll build you one, but I wouldn't do it to your to an amplifier like that. That might not be right. So anyway, VHolic, thanks for the comment. I much appreciate that. Dan the Two Man, what's up, Dan? I wonder if everyone hears their own version of Sound Slightly. Absolutely. As an example, I was learning the bass line to a song. By the third time through, I could hear more bass in the song. Yes, I usually listen for guitar. Who knows what drummers hear? They hear this mostly, candy, stuff like that. Great look into the different mix of things, Ossie. Yeah, so Dan, you hit onto something that's like enormously important. Enormously important. So it's psychoacoustics and how your brain perceives sound. All right. It's even, all right. So you have nerves, right, that are inside there and they're being tickled, so to speak, by the sound pressure that hits the eardrum and then tickles the nerves. And then you just have electrical impulses traveling down these synapses into your brain that recreate these things into sound, right? So this is getting into maybe philosophy or whatever, but do you know whether what is out there is matching what's in your head? Absolutely not. So there's no way to know if anyone is even hearing anything remotely like you. But at the same time, your points of reference are fixed, so you could describe things and change things and you'll hear similar differences. But if you're at the same point, you don't know. Now, that the other thing that's much more important than this, and I think a lot of people who've done recording have noticed this, is that, okay, let me check my mic volume. I don't know if this is right. Where is my mic volume at? It's too low, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I should let me put a compressor on this just so there we go. Okay, that's better. I just wanted to put something on there so it helps keep my voice level. All right, so anybody who's done some recording or, broadcasting or anything like this will realize something. The first time you listen to a playback, let's say, of your guitar, and you listen to it and you're like, oh God, that has to stop. It's terrible. So anyway, your brain sort of plays what you're playing along with what you're hearing. So for instance, like if you're listening to a record that you've heard for the first time, it's going to sound different than the fifth time you've heard it, only because your brain now remembers what that song is and how it goes. And it is literally, like if you hear a song in your head when there's no music, it's doing that while you're playing. So the difficult part is, for instance, like if you're trying to cop a lick or a tone, it's difficult to know whether it's the sound in your head is mixing with the sound that you're hearing through your ears, and the two are combining. It's almost impossible to stop that from happening. The question is, can you figure out how to compensate for it? So everybody hears everything a little different, and they remember different parts, and it's gonna remember things a little bit differently too. So many people focus on, like they say, like once you become like a guitar player, you can't listen to music anymore that has a guitar in it because all you listen to is the guitar. So here's Dan learning bass lines, and then all of a sudden, he's focusing in on the bass, and he's hearing the bass line in his mind as he's hearing it through his ears. So yeah, it is a very strange thing to do, and it makes things difficult to really know whether what you're hearing is real or not. So it's good to have people to bounce things off of. So that's kind of cool. That's a great comment, Dan. Let's see. We got Eric Tripton. Nice This was for the Marshmello How Loud Is It demo. Nice gainy, even tone. Well, thank you. It dawned on me, Ossie, I have acquired a couple of Germino Lead 55 LVs, which I think are low volts. And as much as I tweak or boost or this or that, the best sound I get, or at least the foundation, is to use a non-master volume 1968 year JMP Super Lead circuit. Really, all the rabbit hole journey is fun, but honestly, having that amp is the key ingredient. Then I could tweak to my ears for me. True. It's as if I borrowed Ed's Marshall for a bit and to dial in my own sound, but that explosive dynamic basis of a Noble Super Lead is at the heart of it. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that architecture, right? It's not a multiple gain stage amplifier. It's not like a Soldano or a 5150 or even, a JMP like a 2204, the first cascaded singles cascade master volume amps that Marshall came out with. It's not that sound. It's a super lead sound. But how he ran that super lead was not the way that it would appear if you were to take a super lead out of the box, stick it on top of a 412 cabinet, and turn it on and play it. You wouldn't get the effect that is happening, sort of the way that the environment is affecting the amplifier. You could absolutely make it, the amplifiers do that. But, it's the super lead in a very particular setup. So yeah, which can't be replicated, with a multiple gain stage amp. So yes, the dynamics too, right? The dynamics of the amplifier are also really important. We could talk about some more about dynamics, right? All right, so let's imagine this is like dynamics. Imagine a kid like bouncing up and down on a bed. Okay. It's very dynamic. Okay. And annoying. So a kid will like bounce up and down on the bed, right? And he'll go up and he'll do a little twirl and come back down, go up, do a little twirl, come back down, go up, down, up, down. And a lot of fun stuff happens while the kid is up in the air, right? So if you were to do compression, right? Let's imagine that the top of this screen here is sort of like the ceiling. All right. So in a very dynamic situation, you're going to have the kid go up and he's going to do a little dance and he's going to come back down. He's going to go up, do a little dance and come back down. If you have a lot of compression, right, then it's going to lower the ceiling on the kid. And he's basically going to go and like bang his head against the wall, travel along the wall and come back down again. And then jump up again, bang his head against the wall, travel along the ceiling again, and come back down again. So you miss all the dynamics of what happens during the transition. It's like going up, slam, down, instead of up, woo, down, right? So an amplifier that's able to go up and down, and is not overly compressed will have the appearance of more dynamics. Now, explosiveness. Let's say like explosiveness. What is explosiveness? So in sound, an explosive sound, I think we've talked about this, is one that has a very short duration with a very high peak. So it's sort of something that goes straight up and straight down again. And that creates an explosive sound, right? That's how your ears perceive it. It's shocking, right? Your ears don't get a chance to adjust. If you have, let's say, like a jet engine, right? As soon as it goes up, your ears will sort of adjust and your brain will adjust. Even though it's loud as hell, it doesn't sound explosive because it's now leveled off, right? So, but it's the shock that creates that punch, It's the punch. It's the up and down quick. So if you were to take something that's like an explosive sound and bring the duration out, like in a compressed situation, it would just sound like a jet engine. So there needs to be dynamics for there to be punch and for there to be explosiveness, right? So like on a guitar, if it's able to, clean up quickly after the first punch, then it sounds that way. And you can hear there's a lot of, at the very peak of the note, there's information in there, which is variable and changing and interesting. Whereas if it were overly distorted, it would sound very smoothed off, not rough with character. So that's like a big sort of like lesson that took sort of like a while for me to like learn too, was like a lot of times a very gainy amplifier on a record doesn't sound good. You know, it's sort of like it sounds overly, it's dull. You know, it doesn't swing, it doesn't have a character to it. It just sounds kind of dull, and you back off the gain, and all of a sudden it starts to sound really nasty. It's sort of like, you know, playing Highway to Hell, how that guitar sounds on that. It just sounds just nasty and gritty and growly, and it's very clean compared to like if you were in the room with it and listening to it and playing it to be like, I need more gain. But when you put it on the record, when you put a mic in front of it, it's like, oh, wow, that definitely sounds nasty. So there's something to be said about that for sure. Eric Tripton, I appreciate that. And a shout out to my boy, Greg Germino. What the hell you want to shout out to me for, Ozzy? If you're out there, Greg. Let's see. Dan, that's the sound. Thanks, Dan. My exotic EP booster is always on. Awesome. I like a little bit of something in the front too every once in a while. You know, depending upon on what I got, what I'm running. All right, so let's go. We got the next one. Ryan Hicks with a question. Ryan Hicks. Is it safe to run a normal super lead set at 8 or 4 ohms into a 16 ohm cabinet? Yes, I mean it is. Now there's practical and then there is sort of like theoretical. So the theoretical of it would be, well, if you have this condition, the amplifier, the bias point, because the reflective impedance back to the tubes is going to change, and you could be putting the tubes into a unsafe territory. Also, the transformer may experience flyback. Well, you know, in my opinion, it's sort of like the real world doesn't exactly work that way. So if you look at a speaker, right, and what it actually does and its impedance, that impedance changes depending upon frequency. So, for instance, low versus high frequencies are going to have a different resistance passing through any given coil. All right, that's just part of the physics of it. Nothing gets through there of different frequencies exactly the same way, right? So that's what creates the sounds of different things, is that, oh, at this frequency, it has this kind of a roll-off to it. At this frequency, it looks like this. And at this frequency, it looks like that. And it goes on infinitely. And those profiles, those endless profiles combine into a sonic image. That is what you hear. So when you're running, let's say like a 4 ohm into a 16 ohm, it's going to change the reflected impedance back through the output transformer and onto the tubes. And you're going to get a different sonic characteristic in a sense, because, you know, it's going to be linear, but there's going to be a slight change in the tone of the amplifier, and the bias point may shift a little bit. But in terms of it being safe, it should be. I would always stress that you want to, you know, just double check that the amplifier's bias is still okay, you know, that the tubes aren't red plating. But yeah, I mean, you can do it. It's not going to be a problem in my experience. I have never had a problem with anything like that. It's just, you know, and maybe if you're on the very bleeding edge of, you know, the technology and you're trying to, you know, exactly put out the most amount of power that you can possibly put out of these tubes under this load condition, and then you change the loading, yeah, you might run into problems because you're on the bleeding edge and there's no more room for variation, right? Or there's no cushion. So I would check things. But yes, it's, in my opinion, it's safe, you know, but, you know, you should do your own research too and decide for yourself whether you want to do it or not. Let's see. Malcolm Mixon. I am getting better tones for my 5150 and a few stomp boxes. Well, you're a lucky man then, because I'm not. Let's see. I lost my spot here. Let's see, Eddie effects. Where did we spot off? Where did we spot off? Hang on. All right, let's see. I think there's a couple other things. Absolutely. I don't know why I lost my spot here. This is embarrassing. Oh. Where were we? Where were we? I can't believe I just lost everything here. All right. Let's just get to here. Pedro Lorenko, I've just built my Plexi and I would love to know more specs about your amp. Well, I sort of, I think I've gone over it. It's stock. It's stock. I mean, there's no gain stages. There's no changing of any parts in there. It's like pretty much like a 68, 69 Super Lead. There's not much to it in that way. It's just about how it's running. That's all it is, right? Craig Cornell, apparently it's loud enough to sound awesome. Way to go. So that's how loud is the Marshall. Well, thanks, Craig. I appreciate that. Buzzed All Drink for the how loud is the Marshmello. If Landy heard this, he would say that this is the quietest Marshall he's ever heard. It's the best sounding Marshall I've ever heard at such a low volume. Awesome. Thank you yet again. Thanks for the kind words, Buzzed. I don't know how loud Ed's is because I've never heard it at that time. But yeah, Don Landy had said that, if you hadn't been following in some of these videos, we were talking about, that Don Landy had done this interview in Tape Op magazine. I think it was it with Greg Renoff? I think it was. And it was really good. It had a lot of interesting stuff in there. And Don had commented that, his amplifier was one of the quietest amplifiers, or the quietest, not one, the quietest Marshall he'd ever heard. So, that's telling you something is going on with the transformers, right? Or the way he's running it, because that just doesn't happen by accident. There's a lot of talk about was Ed just got a really good Marshall, or, some Marshalls do sound like that. I can promise you, I swear on my life, it isn't that way. I have owned a ton of Plexis, bought and sold them, traded them, herded them, fixed them. Ones that are owned by, rock stars, right? That you've heard on albums. All of these things, they pretty much all sound the same. Some sound like absolute crap because they're broken. But if they're running right, they pretty much all sound the same. Not one of them has like this magic gain level that none of the other ones have. You hear stories about that all the time. Like, oh, I heard about this guy who got an amplifier and it was out in the rain for 6 years. And when they turned it on, it sounded like Van Halen 1 or something like that. And, it's usually secondhand, third hand. I have yet to hear it. And, I used to I had like one of those challenges where it's like, if you can bring me a stock Plexi that sounds like that, I will give you $10,000 right on the spot. Now, here you go. Here's your money. Take it easy. And you can leave with your amp too. They just don't, right? There has to be something happening around the amplifier for it to sound like that. So it's just not the case. They don't sound that way. So anyway, there's also some interesting stuff, and I have to find the quote, but in Tone Chaser, there's something that is interesting too, that book, Tone Chaser by Rosen, versus this Renoff interview. And Renoff was asking Landy, about the setup, and Landy said he only used one amplifier in a cabinet. Okay, could be. And then in the Rosen book, Ed says to Rosen in an interview, I've always used two amplifiers. So who knows, right? Once again, we have conflicting information from different sources. I'm going to find the quote in the book and bring it up and read it to you guys. I'm sure a lot of you have had the book or have the book, have read that he says he's always used 2 Marshalls. It's like, have you always, are you using the same Marshall? It's like, well, yeah, I always use 2 though. So is it one that's dirtier than the other one in terms of how it's set up? Is one being used as a power amp? I don't know. So more mysteries from the never-ending box of mysteries. All right, so let's keep going on. Sounds really good. Chris Gondoli. Thank you. I appreciate that. Orbital Jellyfish. What's up, Orbital? Adding effects would compress and attenuate a bit more, right? Excellent work in demo. I'm not sure where you mean where the effects would be. I think that might be the issue there. If you were to put effects in front of an amplifier, it wouldn't attenuate anything, right? If you were to put it after the amplifier, yes, it could. If you're using like, a load box and a power amp, you could do things like that or compress and things like that. But this was in that video, how loud is the Marshmello, the 1 amp? It's just going straight into that basket weave that was back there, right? Just, there was nothing but guitar, amp, cable, speaker. So adding effects shouldn't really attenuate anything. Compressing it, you could obviously put, whatever you want in front of the amp and it could do different things. So yeah, I would leave that open. Ossie, we all want to know the details on that output transformer, Pedro. It's just basically built, for running the amplifier at a weird in a weird place, right? It's nothing that you couldn't do with a stock transformer and a load box, right? It's not really anything you couldn't do in that case. You would need a variac, a load box, and a line out on the load box, and that's it. So the transformers, just the output transformer just accommodates that feature in a sense, and the power transformer in the amplifier is already simulating the variac down. So it is like, it lowers the filaments, it lowers the B+, everything is lowered down to as the same it would be if you had a variac set at like 80, 85 volts, somewhere in that range. So yeah, the specs on the output transformer, I mean, I have them built by Hayboer, but that's about it. See, Sean Kearns it was on a Jose amp that's on, occasionally on Reverb, I'll sell, like, if I've got time and I like building stuff. So I'll like think of something to build. And usually, it's like, oh, I'll build another Jose, like a 50-watt small box kind of deal. And I put them up on Reverb, and then I do a demo for them. So that was that video. And Sean Kearns was like, damn, that's tasty. Thanks. Appreciate that, Sean. And then there's Dan the Tube Man again on the how loud is the Marshmello deal. On that video, you tame the Marshallplexi without neutering it. Yeah, I don't know if it's so much tamed. It's kind of been aggravated. In my opinion, it's like if it was, but I get you, Dan. I definitely get you. I feel like it's like I've aggravated it. And Dan is also saying that wet dry is the best sound he ever got. And that is like the sound, right? To have straight down the middle, solid shot surrounded by, some effects to kind of, round it all out and get things really cool. So that's neat. I found where we left off now. There was some, I just didn't know that there were some earlier ones. All right. So let's keep going in. Safe to run. We did that. Yeah. So those are our questions. I think that's all of them. Some people were asking about the 1984 Chase versus like the, first album sound and what to do. Sometimes you get burned out. It's like you're listening to it and you're listening to it and you're listening to it and you're like, I got like 15 different versions of, chocolate hazelnut right here. They all pretty much taste like chocolate hazelnut. And I, One's slightly chocolatier, one's a little bit more hazily, nuttier, one's a little bit more coffeeier. So yeah, every once in a while it's a good idea to give yourself some brain floss and get away from what you're doing so that you can come back at things with like a fresh perspective and a fresh ear. And that's really where you start to make, strides forward. You don't really make strides when you're constantly working at the same problem all day, every day, chipping away at it. You can, but after a while, you got to put it down and you just got to step back and go to a different thing. And then you can gain some perspective on what you were doing. And you might even find something in the new project that spurs the idea to how you can move forward with the last project, right? So the 1984 Tone Chase is really about, figuring out, that sound with the same amplifier, learning about it, and whether it inspires some development in, the Van Halen 1 chase. So it's, it's sort of like we'll see where it goes, for sure. I was talking to someone yesterday about this, and I feel like, I don't know how much closer I can get on Van Halen 1. Like, I'm really, for the first time in my life, and this is just for me, I'm actually happy with the way my amp sounds. It's like, okay, I finally found something that I really am satisfied with, which was never the case. I mean, there's like, there is an entire exhaust trail over the last 40 years of amplifier designs coming out of my tailpipe trying to get to here. And right now I'm satisfied. Now, that doesn't mean like in another couple weeks, months, or years, I'll feel exactly the same way. I don't know. But right now I'm really happy with where I'm at. So I don't really see, changing too much there. So it's like getting back into the Van Halen 1 thing again. I'm like, well, I'm going to wait until Landy has some stuff to say, some more things to say, because I think the rest of it is just really in what was going on in the studio. How he was able to transform that really raw, splatty, overly overdriven, broken Marshall sound into what we hear on the album. That's kind of where I'm at now. I want to hear what he was doing, the mixing, what, techniques he applied, because the guy was obviously, very creative about what he was doing, so it could be anything. And that's really what I want to hear next, is what Don Landy has to say about mixing that record or miking that amplifier, or, what the chain was at the board, more of that stuff. I mean, we learned some things too from the Renoff interview on Tape Off regarding, his choice of echo chambers, that he used all of the stuff, especially that AKG spring reverb was used a lot, he said, on the album. And, it doesn't sound like any other spring, it doesn't have like this boing sound to it. It sounds, kind of really good. Like almost like platish. Let's listen to that for a second. Let's listen to some reverbs for a second, because that could be kind of cool. So I'm going to go into GarageBand. I'm going to load up the Sunset Sound. Okay? And then we'll listen to these sounds. So right now, let me mix up this a little bit. Okay, there we go. All right, so we're going to listen to the different reverbs. So this is Chamber Studio 1. So this is what Don said he used the most, right? I'm gonna get let me get to the guitar up too, and I'm gonna mute which one? Sunset. That does. So we're gonna turn off this. No, we need that. We gotta go back into the track rather. Bear with me. Turn off that. And that's it. Okay, so let's get back into the Sunset Sound plugin. All right, so this is the chamber from Studio One, which he said he used quite a bit but I think he said Studio 2 is his favorite. So for Studio 1, yeah, we have this. I'm probably blowing out that a little tiny bit. Let me turn off this one here and see. Or we'll turn off this one, put this one on. Alright, get back that down a little bit. Alright, so let's get back into there. Alright, so let's go to Studio 2's chamber. Right? Studio 3. This sounds a lot more cavernous, doesn't it? That one, he doesn't even mention. I think it sounds really good. So let's go. This is the one I think he said he liked the most. Alright, so that's that one. Now let's do the AKG because we wanted to talk about that, right? So we're going to go to plate and spring. This is the AKG. Right, that's spring. Doesn't sound like a Fender, like boing, right? Has a very long decay time. So obviously this would be mixed in with the, with the dry sound. So, and pan. So. Let's go to the plate. So this is the second plate in the T-Rex Sunset Sound Studio Reverb thing. Listen to this. All right, this is the single plate. So these are all some pretty good, they sound great. Let's go back to the chambers. Yeah, I think this one really does sound. Interesting. All right, so let's get out of this. Yeah, so I don't even remember what the hell we were talking about, just like all the different things that Don did. Um, yeah, so I think, until Don starts talking about what he was doing, um, I'm kind of just going around in a circle, right? Trying to get that kind of a thing. Um, I have to find there's a user on that not a user but a member of the channel or someone that hangs out here that I talk to a lot, Tim O'Keefe, and he has been experimenting with a Marshmello a lot, and he's been doing these videos, these cuts rather, videos too, but these cuts of women and children first that are just ridiculous. I mean, they're ridiculous the way that he's got that sound close. So, if I know you're listening to this, Tim, so we gotta find a way. I don't know how to work any of this stuff here. We gotta find a way where you could be on that side of the screen and I could be on somewhere over here, and you could kind of like move us through what you're doing to get us to like the women and children first thing, because what you're doing there is just nuts. I think it's crazy. It sounds like just like it. So maybe we could figure out a way to do that. I really want to figure out how to do like multiple screens, because I've got like friends that are out on the road with bands, and they could, it's interesting to talk to these guys. They're really funny and they have a lot of interesting stories, and you could get some insight into what's going on out there with some of these bands, what they're using and how they're rolling and all that good stuff. So yeah, I got to figure out how to do all this. So bear with me while we do it. So yeah. So I think that's it for this Sunday. I hope you guys had some fun. And we're going to just keep going. There's nothing else to do. You can't question. You just keep moving, keep stepping one foot in front of the other and see what you find, right? Because it's all about where you're, walking there and seeing what you see along the way. All right. So I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.